punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Coming round to the third hour of Kenya's biggest conversation this morning. It's 8 minutes after 8 o'clock. Where are you joining us in from this morning? Around the world and in the country, karibuni sana. The question you ask, where is Eric Lassif? Well, he's away for a couple of weeks, and even as we do that, the conversations continue. Welcome also to our audiences on KTN Home as we continue with Kenya's biggest conversation. El Nino is coming, and everybody's wondering, who is this visitor and what are they coming to do here and how long will they be here? What do we need to serve up? We know that there's certain phenomenons happening with the weather, and we're getting into that conversation this hour. Our guest to help us through with that conversation is already seated in the hot seat this morning. And even as we get into that conversation, I'm just going to introduce him in a bit. And we have questions, and we're saying, what are we going to do about it in terms of disaster preparedness? Where are we? Nino is our guest this morning, and he is the Emergency Preparedness and Response Manager for the Kenya Red Cross, and we'll be talking matters El Nino this morning. Nino, good morning.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here today, and a hot conversation today about a hot phenomenon that's about to come to Kenya's shores, literally. And as we get into that, I want to welcome you with today's proverb from Malawi. CT.
Yes, the country of Malawi. A piece of incense may be as large as the knee, but unless burnt, emits no fragrance.
Nino, what do you think about that?
A piece of incense may be as large as the knee.
Yes.
But unless burnt, may not produce any meaningful whatever fragrance.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. We know an incense is meant to produce a fragrance which is pleasant and is supposed to improve the smell of that environment. So being as large as the knee, we know incense are mostly small pieces. As large as the knee, it's fairly huge. But unless it is probed, unless it is triggered in a way for that process, unless that process is triggered by something, and this time is the fire, then it cannot produce that fragrance. So it remains just that, something just there. We are talking about hidden potentials here. If these hidden potentials are not, we don't identify them, we don't find a way of activating them, then they'll remain just that, pictures, but they are not meaningful in any way.
Indeed. That's interesting.
It is, and I think it's very well explained.
How many points are you giving out today?
What, on a scale of 1 to 10?
Or a million, whatever you fancy.
All right, let's make it simple. On a scale of 1 to 10?
Yes.
11.
Voila.
Thank you.
So, it's almost become a buzzword, this El Nino. For many people, it means copious amounts of rain. For many people, it's just rain. And El Nino was, in terms of a phenomenon, in this part of the world a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And we felt the effects of it, moves. And before we even go into how Kenya's preparing for it, please explain to us, who is this guy, El Nino? We hear he has a sister called La Nina and all sorts of things. But please tell us, what exactly is this before we go to preparedness of a potential disaster that's looming?
Yeah, thank you. El Nino, without going into the scientific processes of it, it's basically something we do to do with the sea surface temperatures, which again, the trigger of the way moisture behaves in the air until it converts into rain. So when it's cold, we are told over the land, then we get low rain, and that's when we get the La Nina. So, and the water mass here is the Indian Ocean. So when it's warm, then we get to have more moisture over land, and then we get more rain. So in simple terms, that's how it is. That's the simple process, and this time we are likely to face increased sea surface temperatures over the Indian Ocean, translating into a lot of rain over the land, mostly East Africa here. This, again, it's coming closely with the season of the short rain season, which we experience especially in Kenya, October, November, December. And the simple effect and the direct effect is they have said it's likely to lead to enhanced rains. So enhanced rains here means above normal rains as experienced over the last 30 years, the average rains over the last 30 years. So therefore, the enhanced rains, it means we expect more than normal rains, and therefore likelihood of a lot of effects beyond what we get with the normal rains. And these effects may in some areas become destructive, but one thing we are for sure, they are likely going to be disruptive. And the simple effect and most obvious one we expect is the flooding. It can come in different intensities, different levels, according to the different areas of the country. But we expect that because when we have enhanced rains, then we have enhanced water surface flow, and therefore the floodings.
When we say more rain, what are we talking about? Are we talking about rain over time for longer? Are we talking about intensity of the water that's actually falling from the sky? What are we talking about?
Yes, it can be either, but for this forecast, according to the forecast which was released sometimes on 30th last month, it is indicating both enhanced rains, both in time and space. And in space here means the geography, of course, more areas are going to experience rains, and in time we expect longer rains. But within this time again, the intensity in terms of the amounts of rain, which again they measure in millimeters, it's likely to be higher.
You know, whenever one hears of rains was supposed to be a source of joy and happiness.
Sure.
Because it was the forerunner to bounty. But the discussions around El Nino are the complete opposite. It's fear, dread, anticipation of something that is destructive. Which then brings in the discussion of mitigation. Since you know it is going to happen, let's talk about case studies of countries who have successfully mitigated against El Nino. The question is, do they actually exist? Are there places where they've mitigated successfully against El Nino?
Yeah, yes, they might be, but
might be.
As a case study, as the way you are saying, again, it's very unfortunate because what is supposed to bring life is expected to bring life. And I usually say it's very unfortunate, especially in our countries, because the floods issues has become too cyclic in a way that we know the seasons, year in, year out. However, the intensity of the effects of the floods, but it's like we just sit and wait. Now, for the El Nino here, it is, we expect more effects. We have had experience, not very long time ago, fairly recently. The worst, of course, was 97, 98. But in 2015, too, we had some level. But unfortunately, we may not be doing enough. Even beside getting the forecast, we may not be doing enough to be able to mitigate, as you have just said. And because mitigation here is wide, and it goes beyond the time the forecast is issued, if you try to go backwards, because it links very much to maybe development and other long-term programs we may have, which ensure that the infrastructure and the simple way of life of the people is very much ready to mitigate the effects, which again, that's why maybe we may lack very specific case study, which especially in this side of Africa, which can serve as an example of a country which has mitigated effectively.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's look at Kenya specifically. We already know from the forecast, the meteorological department has told us. We've had world global bodies also telling us what is going to happen in a couple of weeks. We can feel it, actually. You can feel the moisture in the air. You can feel it just coming off of a warmer position over the last couple of weeks. If that's anything to go by, we know it is coming, right?
Yes.
So even if there are no case studies about how things have been done effectively, from a disaster preparedness point of view, what are some things that need to be done? Because it's a force of nature, number one. There's very little you can do to control it or stop it from coming, right? But what are some things that can be done to be prepared to meet the force that it will come with?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, as I said earlier, so some of these actions around mitigation, some may be long-term, but once the alert is issued, there are those simple actions which may serve as effective. One is the approach of the whole thing, because we know we always face resource constraints as much as possible. We can never have enough resources, but we usually have an approach which we call no regrets approach, where you put in some mitigation measures in a way that even if the rains does not come, you can be able to still fit in strengthening the resilience of the community. And in this case, as imminent as it is, there are some very, we may say, achievable actions which can be done as early actions to be able to enable the communities to mitigate. One, of course, is to ensure a clear understanding, and the communities really have an understanding of what is likely to face them, and also in relation to how are they positioned in terms of their environment and the likely effects in their locality. But this, of course, cannot be done, or rather, we cannot just depend on individual families, villages to do this. There is, of course, the structures, the simple leadership, administrative and organizational structures which are in place. This is the time now to come together. We, as Kenya Red Cross, we are really championing the more localized as much as possible, especially at the county level, where they come together and understand how exposed they are, and then identify which areas they can strengthen. And it can be in form of identifying some of the activities, including clearing drainage in some of the areas, for example, the riverines and the river routes, but also in terms of looking at how the communities have settled. As I said, this being fairly cyclic in some of the areas in the country, the way the population has settled, they know how exposed they are.
Yeah.
So this is the time to support the communities, maybe to relocate a little bit and identify higher grounds where they can be able to move, even if it is for a short time, or support them have some form of temporary settlements in safer areas, and then from there they can be supported, because as they remain in the lower grounds, they're more exposed now to effects and more related effects which come up with flooding. Also, this is the time now we are advocating to look into the other support services, essential services, and do what we call prepositioning of essential materials. For example, health. We may want to identify the health facilities which are likely to be affected. We know very well the disruptive nature of the floods may render some of the communities marooned, or they are not able to access these facilities. So we may want to look at how can we therefore preposition essential medicine and the services and be able to enable them reach or access this. Some others may include even food in some areas. We saw as late as April some areas in Moyale where after the long drought, some of the communities, they were marooned by waters coming from Ethiopian highlands.
Yeah.
And the food they had received as a relief was washed completely. So we had now to do airdrops. So this is the time to look at that and see how we can preposition. But most importantly is to work with the communities themselves, try to increase their awareness about how exposed they are and how they can do the simple life-saving first, and also other actions at either the family level or small community levels in their localities.
Are there areas that are more prone to some of these disastrous consequences of El Nino? Meaning, it isn't the first time that we're going to experience this phenomenon.
Yeah.
And so it is known that there are places that are prone to landslides.
Sure.
There are places that are prone to flooding.
Yes.
Now, it appears that is a problem, but the aftermath also comes with its own problems.
Correct.
There's the issue now of diseases and ensuring that, as you say correctly, enough food. But is it possible to prepare communities well ahead of time? Because the warning signs for El Nino have been there for a while now.
Yeah, sure.
And if there's a way of preparing communities who are perhaps right in the pathway of this disaster, how does one go about it?
Yes, we know, first of all, as per the forecasts, it is indicating northeastern Kenya, central, southeastern part are likely going to face the more effects, or rather the more enhanced rains. And according to the analysis, at least 25 counties are at a very high risk of increased effects of the rains. Having known that, it's very right to say that there are some areas which we are likely, we know even as at now, we can predict they're going to face more effects than the others. And yes, prone to landslides, as you have said, and floods. That is the first step, and this is one of the activities which is ongoing. We are trying to provide technical support and leadership as necessary, especially at the lower levels, working with the communities to be able to map up the more exposed population, the more exposed areas. And so the preparation here is one, working with the communities, first of all, to understand. Once they understand, and together we assist them in analysis of that information, and to see, for them to know, yes, we are livestock farmers. This is our grazing lands, but they are likely going to be flooded. If we stay here in this period, we are likely going to lose all the animals. Then what do? Then actions are taken, early actions, the ones we call early actions, where they can do, and then they reduce the exposure. So it is true. It can happen working with the communities, but by the end of the day, the communities need support, because this is beyond their normal life, and we know our population. Most of these are families which, from the word go, they are economically challenged, and their livelihoods are low. So they'll need, by the end of the day, resource support one way or the other, coupled with the other knowledge and awareness which they need. Yes.
What can practically happen? Because the truth of the matter is that these parts that would be affected, we can already see from geography, probably have large populations in terms of numbers. There's a space issue, there is a resource issue in terms of, then getting resources to them while they have to be away from where they call home for a period of time.
No.
Is it practical? I mean, we may not have a choice, but from what we see, if you just want to look at some of the more congested areas of Nairobi, for example, would it be practical, which would probably bear the brunt of the effect of El Nino, would it be practical to move these people? And the question is then, how does that happen? Looking at Kenya Red Cross and the work that you've done in Kenya and other parts of the world, what would make most sense? To move hundreds of thousands of people to a temporary setup for a particular period of time, or say, well, let's just cross our fingers and knock on wood that the rain will not wash away our homes?
Yeah. Thank you. When we get these alerts, as we have recently seen, we go into part of the preparedness, and part of the preparedness is some of those actions, and there are various sectors which guide the actions which are taken. For example, as I talked about health, there are those specific activities and actions which need to be taken. There's two things here: the practicality and also what is needed to be done, or rather the best way of approaching this. When we talk about population living in the flood zone, for example, those living in the river basins, which is almost automatic that the area is going to be flooded, then the most basic and the realistic action is to relocate. And we have worked with communities in Tana River, and over time they have been able to identify temporary areas, higher ground, and with little support, we have managed to move thousands of families, and it reaches a time where it's even now, the initiative starts from them. Because they know they stay down there because that is where their farms are. But when the floods come, they know they can go temporarily. Sometimes even it is renting. What we are doing as Red Cross National Society, we are prepositioning some of the emergency shelter items.
Okay.
Which are kits to be able to support a family, a small family, to be able to live temporarily with some dignity as they wait now to go back. So yes, it is very practical. It can be done, and again, as we are saying, we are organizing at a locality level where we preposition, and when the time comes, when the final alerts are issued, this what has come up is now like an early warning, but there are those alerts when the rain starts. Then we work with the communities to move. So it is practical. It can be done, but it is best done looking at the risk of exposure. The higher the families are exposed, then these are the numbers which need to be moved. Okay.
Siti, I know you have a question. It looks like it's burning. Can we take a break and come back and continue?
Yes.
At 27 minutes to 9 o'clock, we're looking at, El Nino is knocking on the door. It's coming. And what are the things that need to be done in the capital, around the country, to be able to say that we'll mitigate, and so that the effect of it will not be so much felt around the country. We'll come back and continue with that conversation after this break.
You are watching KTN. Welcome home.
You were the last one in my office before the documents got lost. That means you misplaced them. How irresponsible are you, Mr. Agarwal?
I believe that life is exactly like we see in the movie.
Not even my own children would have done what Nisha has done for me today.
No, Aunt.
Nisha, why do you do that?
How long has this been going on for?
I don't understand why it is happening. I'm not able to take care of him anymore. He's not happy with me.
What on earth are you saying?
Believe me when I say these words to you. You will have no more celebrations.
Tembiris nanu aloiro, tembiris nanu airorira. Na kwamba mahali nimefika ni kwa neema ya Bwana, ninanena kwa sababu ya neema. Kama singekuwa msanii, ningekuwa ninafanya fashion and design. Mimi mwenyewe najidesign, iko ndani yangu. Tupatane hii Thursday saa 2 usiku. Program ni Behind the Music.
All I need is one more chance. All I need is for you to say, you're giving me one more chance, and I promise you I will never, ever in my life, never do anything to deceive you.
Oh, that is so sweet. Are we acting a movie or something? Because I am not MFI.
Just one more chance, please.
You are mature, right?
You were the last one in my office before the documents got lost. That means you misplaced them. How irresponsible are you, Mr. Agarwal?
I believe that life is exactly like we see in the movie.
Not even my own children would have done what Nisha has done for me today.
No, Aunt.
Nisha, why do you do that?
How long has this been going on for?
I don't understand why it is happening. I'm not able to take care of him anymore. He's not happy with me.
What on earth are you saying?
Believe me when I say these words to you. You will have no more celebrations.
I was not meant to be a lawyer.
No?
No.
What you want to do?
No. I knew I would be a surgeon in my life.
Oh, wow.
When I thought I would go for medicine, I was told there's something called cluster, things I didn't understand. Then they locked me out. So I was told, if you don't go and change, go to Nairobi and change, they will not take you for medicine. That is how I first came to Nairobi in a hearse. But you know, also in my heart, I wanted to be in Nairobi. I only saw Nairobi on TV.
So how'd you connect with Baba then?
Baba is a good man.
Yeah.
And he told me, I've been looking for somebody I can trust to do this job. And I think you can do it. I was shocked, my sister. I knew Baba was my friend, but not that he could appoint me to be his PA.
If you stand here, you can see as far as your eyes will allow you to see. So when it rains, there is no high ground to go to. Yes. And yet there's a river. And then given it's black cotton, water tends to sit on it for a little longer before it seeps into the ground. So the floods there tend to have a fairly serious effect. I mean, jokes are cracked about it, the Serikali's idea and all these things, but it's a reality. Now, there are those who argue that one of the things you do is you can redirect the river or create man-made distributaries for it so that it doesn't just flow in one direction. So here's the river, but divert it, let it go elsewhere. There are those who say that perhaps what one needs to do is to consider moving away from that particular area. Well, if you moved away from any place that floods every once in a while, then the truth of the matter is you would never learn to actually build resilience. But what we're discussing now is what one would call anticipatory action.
Yeah, sure.
How does one get communities to understand these things in advance so that it isn't an emergency? It's something you've planned for. So even before it actually happens, you've already taken steps to ensure that the damage that is caused is minimized completely.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Sisi. The best way to approach some of these natural disasters effectively is working around anticipatory action, which now relates very closely with early actions, which needs to be done when that event is imminent. And in this country, we have worked with our partners, Kenya Red Cross, with the International Federation of the Red Cross, and some other partners to work with communities on an early action protocol. And this early action protocol on floods, we have done 2 on floods and also on drought. But on floods, because it's our topic, it's targeting counties in the Athi, Nzoia, and Tana basin. For now, it's some 6 counties. And the early action protocol stipulates the early actions which are mostly anticipatory, which to be done in case there are alerts of, or rather, there's early warnings around floods. And this includes what you are saying in the Kano Plains. Some of the actions is, first of all, understanding. Yes, is it the whole area which is going to be flooded, or which areas? If there are other areas, I think 2 words needs to be used together here. There's the higher grounds and safer grounds. So if there are any safer grounds within the Kano Plains, yes, we can move there. If not, then some of the early actions is to improve the river route to be able to support us, which is what you are saying, like redirecting and creating some of those distributaries. But the other one is the dike. Dikes is mostly a long and heavy activities, but in the anticipatory actions, there's a time to reinforce these dikes to ensure that they serve as the preventive mechanism of the water flooding the area. And then the others is to, again, working with the communities. There are some of the simple which can be done in their settlements, like what we're talking about, improving drainage around their areas. And then all this is, again, meant to reduce the exposure to the flooding. So it is not, relocating is total relocation works against the resilience. And as we know, land matters, or rather land ownership. Land is not available for everybody here. So you start moving, then they lose their land, and yet floods is only periodical. So where we work again to do those actions. So in the protocol, we bring the partners to come and support. First, they put together some resources which can be accessed to support these activities. And sometimes it's on a cash for work approach, where the people themselves can work. They are given some cash incentives, then they unblock the drainage, they improve the dikes and things like that. So yes, this is where we are heading. We want to widen that, but it has proved very successful around the anticipatory action, around these early action protocols.
What areas of Kenya are we looking at today? I mean, just from the work that you've done and that you continue to do, what would be the hotspots? We know what the Met has told us in terms of areas where there will be heavy downpour, and it would then be a prolonged downpour. But what would be the hotspots, as it were, where this action, I'm hoping, should have already happened in terms of mitigation?
Yes. So in terms of maybe the counties, there's of course the northeastern counties. First, the prediction is talking about Mandera, Wajir, and some parts of Marsabit having at 85% above normal range. They're going to receive above normal range. Ordinarily, we know, like Mandera West, even without local rains, there rains in southern Ethiopian highlands, they cause flash floods, very serious flash floods. So Mandera West, of course, some areas of Moyale, then they have indicated also some central Kenya counties like Nyeri, Embu, Meru, they are going to receive more than average rains. So you can imagine more than average for the central Kenya highlands. This is, we are talking of course, beside flooding, landslides and possibility of mudslides. Then, of course, the eastern, central eastern parts of Kenya, the Kitui, Makueni, we know how devastating usually it is when they get more than enough rains. Most of the seasonal rivers become rivers, and because people are not normally used to a lot of water, then the devastating effects. Then you go further south, of course, Garissa is in the Tana route. Then you go further south, of course, the Tana River. We expect now a possibility of very significant effects because of the normal rains cause floods, but now enhanced rains, we can try to imagine the Bura and the Garsen areas. And then going west, the West Kenya counties, we have the 5 counties: Busia, Homa Bay, Siaya, Kisumu, Migori, and these are also. They say they are going to receive 55% above normal rains. So then we expect effects there. But also, beside talking about the counties, there are those areas like we have seen some of the informal settlements in urban areas. They are informal and they settle there because these areas are usually accessible. Nobody has gone to own them because they're very marginal in an area that most of them, they are on river routes, very low, and because of the way they are populated, they become very prone again to floods, and a little floods become very devastating because so many people are settled in one place. So these are some of the hot spots if you could look at urban settlements. But for the rural areas, most of the good farming areas in the plains are very prone to floods.
A lot of times we talk about harvesting water, and if anything, El Nino is going to provide its copious amounts of water. Obviously, if we're going to talk about how that could have been done, it is too late now to have anything about that. Does mitigation take into consideration how you can use this thing which is coming in this huge amount and keep it to use then for later? Is that part of mitigation as well?
Yes, we can say these are some of the possible, positive attributes of the El Nino because they bring that relief. But relief, if it is captured well, and one is, and a key one is to do the water harvesting. It is not too late. It is not too late, though it is approaching to becoming late. It is not too late because if you look at some of the arid and semi-arid counties of Kenya, already they had the water pans. So these water pans and some of the actions we are working with our partners to do is desilting of these water pans, making them ready again to be able to receive and store water. repairing some of the boreholes. This to be able to ensure that they can survive any flooding, so that people can continue to get clean water. But the most important thing here is the water harvesting, which again, making the ponds ready and supporting the communities to store water, like in some schools, some of these facilities which are central to communities. We are trying to expand their water storage capacities, so that again, we can harvest the water and they can use the water continuously. So it is not too late. Yeah.
Okay.
You know, when it comes to government policy, I recall as a child, I was a child once, or a younger person. I was actually in primary school at some point. I later came to read, not as a child. See, this was something that was operational when I was a child, but I came to understand it when I was much older. There were municipality laws that required, it was part of the building code, when you put up a building, you had to put up a facility for harvesting water. Had to. It was part and parcel. So if you look at some of the older houses in those days, now, you know, this is the previous century.
Of course.
You're talking about 19, not 20, 19, 60, 70, 80. So all of them had gutters, and there was a container, some sort of tank where you could have water. Now, it was a requirement. Some along the line, I think this requirement got lost. Because I look at many places that we now live in. Yes, there's a passage through which the water can pass, but the storage facility no longer exists.
Yes.
Now, I believe this was a measure to mitigate against periods when there wasn't enough water, because there are periods when there isn't enough water. So this would support it. But in many rural areas, I see people have done that. They have water storage.
Sure.
So even when it's dry, especially because they will have animals, they have water that can last them maybe a couple of months. Would you say that it is possible to actually influence the government to ensure that this is something that is implemented? Because storing water is not as complicated as some people try to make it.
Yeah.
And you also don't need to buy a huge tank in order for you to store water. Not necessarily.
Yeah, sure. Even beside the policy, beside enforcement of such requirements, you can see even in some, even in Nairobi here, some estates, people extending the water storage by erecting tanks. Yeah, yes. Yeah, putting tanks here, 10,000, 5,000. Not because they expect a dry spell, but sometimes maybe the central water system is not as expected.
Yes.
So, yes, this can still be, the communities can still be incited to be able to do that. But also it comes from still as part of the individual family planning to be able to put some of these storage facilities, because when we are talking about preparing for El Nino, the basic and simple at family level, household level, is we are saying it's about understanding what the El Nino is all about, the enhancements, but also coming up with a plan of how to be able to survive this event. And one of it can be just seeing how you can harvest the water. And therefore, it can still start for Kenyans specifically to start at a household level. But also, when we talk about now the communities, it is more appropriate it is done at the community where we are talking about bulk storage. For example, you go to some islands in Lamu, they have some of the water harvesting mechanism where they do tanks, and these are mostly underground tanks but they get they harvest the water rains. They call them jabias. They receive the water rains, and it goes there. These are the islands which don't get any water from any centralized source.
What you talking about Siu and Pate?
Yes. And they get these rains, these waters, and they use these waters for months and months before the next rains. So yes, this can be done. That's why we are really advocating for localized plans.
Sure.
Yeah, at community level, where they can be doing bulk storage using whatever methods which now can be supported with the little modern facilities like pumps, solarization of the systems, and then by the end of the day we get to do bulk storage, which we can regulate, purify, treat, and use for some time.
Tell us a little bit more about this water storage process and plan that is found in these islands.
Yes.
I'm interested.
Now, it is because the need there, they're surrounded by salt water.
Yes,
it's very expensive to do desalination. And the target, therefore, is rainwater, because they can't do water tracking. It's very expensive if we do it, especially by sea. So they target the rainwater. And the rainwater, then it's from the roof. But they have also extended the roof surface by having the tank. The roof of the tank itself is a roof to capture this water. Yeah, so
no surface area is wasted.
So the houses which are nearby, they have done the gutter system. We worked with them to support extending the gutter system to ensure now the water goes to that central area, and then the tanks are very wide. They're very wide, and then of course they have some depth, and the water management, mostly the one of the secrets here is the management, the governance of the use of the water after collecting. So we establish committees for them. But now the tanks, we have agreed that the roof of the tank is one collecting point, and then the main challenge traditionally has been contamination of that water, because they used to use the normal manual way of getting the water from down there. So we come in and now put a pumping system. So this pumping system, we do modern pumps, and because they don't have electricity, and where they have electricity is too expensive anyway, so we do the solar power source, and then we train them how to operate, how to identify and manage these pumps, and then maybe they pay as little as 5 shillings per 20-liter jerry can to maintain. So you can see it is self-sustaining. They don't depend on the Red Cross forever. So the resilience you are talking about is, and it has proved very, very effective, where again they can have water until the next rain season.
Okay. Yeah. Even as you wind this down, I mean, looking at the Red Cross and the work that you do, I mean, it's going to sound a bit odd, but you're in the business of disaster management. It's what you do to make sure that, you know, the effects then are not so far into communities. Looking at help or support that you would get from governments, whether they be county government or the national government, to make sure that the effects of El Nino, which is clear and present, it is coming, is there satisfaction that enough has been done across the country to make sure that at least, you know, we can create those hits, or rather we can have those hits and there's a buffer for those hits? And number two, with it, has all that can be done been done?
Yeah, thank you. One, of course, it is very clear that El Nino is here, and it is a likelihood of devastating effects. And one message we have observed is that at least everybody, or rather the concerned, have been able to understand, and they have realized, yes, there's need to do something. It is very encouraging because we are now getting support in terms of coordinating, because as Kenya Red Cross, we establish and offer platforms for coordination for this disaster management, especially at preparedness stage.
Right.
And ultimately response. So it's very encouraging. We have seen the county authorities coming up and say, hey, guys, can you come to the table and let's start identifying what we need to do.
To get it done.
Yes, we have not done enough yet. What needs to be done has not been done yet. And our conversation now, our message is that we need to strengthen our preparedness.
And do more.
And yes, and our preparedness is what CC was earlier saying, is towards supporting the resilience, strengthening the resilience of the community.
To get more.
To do more, yeah.
Venant Ntigila, thank you so much for being here this morning. Emergency Preparedness and Response Manager at the Kenya Red Cross. It's good to have these conversations.